Hello, everybody. Welcome to Carolyn's Corner. We are sometimes experiencing technical difficulties as we do this, experiment with this new technology, a new way of communicating and reaching out, but hopefully this will go smoothly. So this week is Teacher Appreciation. And like many of you, I was just at the school picking up my son's materials from his class as we come to the end of the school year. And many times I reflect during the school year that one of the most important people in my life is my son's teacher, who is making sure that he is learning math and learning how to read and write and do all of those wonderful things that are so important for both his mental well-being and for his success as a person. So I am so pleased to have here some of our wonderful educators from the community, and we are going to take a moment to appreciate our teachers and also to hear from them about some of the challenges that they face. And we're going to think about sort of some of the challenges they faced pre-coronavirus, but also how this current kind of national crisis has affected teaching in the classrooms and the students. I know this has been a really, really tough time for everybody. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Brittany McCrae, and she is a teacher at Roberts Elementary. And we are so glad to have you here. And if you could just introduce yourself and then, kind of touch on some of the topics we were just talking about.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Once again, my name is Brittany McCrae. I am a first grade teacher at Roberts Elementary. This is my 10th year teaching. I did a year in kindergarten and then the rest was first grade. So that's definitely my love of the younger ones. I enjoy teaching. The little ones are amazing. Just seeing their growth and development throughout the year is one of my favorite things to see. And this is honestly my favorite time of the year, the later end of the year where you can see how they've really come into their own and they're just so excited to show everything that they've learned over the year. Before all of the craziness that happened recently, I would say, some of the struggles are just the things that we've all heard about, class sizes, being able to really touch every single child the way that they need to, and be able to hear them and respect what they need and give them that one-on-one attention. It's really hard to be that one amongst 25 plus students that you have in a class, but we do our best to try to reach every single one. Another difficulty is, of course, testing. I feel our schedules of curriculum are pretty much geared toward testing. So we have to kind of finagle our scheduling of how to teach things and when to teach things to make sure it is met by that time period. And sometimes the kids just don't get it. And, I feel really bad when I just have to tell them, just try, just do your best. But that's all you can do. So when we come up with our lesson plans and schedule the semester or the 9 weeks, we pretty much start at the date of testing and work our way backwards and see how can we fit an enormous amount of material into these amount of weeks and leave time for review, because they probably forgot what you taught them to do. And so those are some of the things that we struggle with. In my school, we are lucky to have a lot of technology. Every school is not that lucky, but we do. And a lot of the time we have to switch what we're doing and put them all on the computer, because taking a test on the computer is a lot different than pencil paper. So that's a different type of teaching, a different type of learning that they have to do. And, with me being a first grade teacher, they are 6 years old and it can be overwhelming for them. So those are just a couple of things that I feel were a struggle beforehand. And now with the COVID crisis, I think the technology piece really was put into perspective of how badly we need more support and more staff development, and to really help us help them and help the parents, because it was a lot, a lot of work. But teaching is what I love, and I'm here to stay.
Oh, wonderful. So, how did the technology work? I mean, we were blessed. I had my mother-in-law's, old laptop that I could put my son on, but, my sister's got 4 kids and 1 laptop. And so it was, all of them were in school, all of them had, classwork. And so she was there with like this intense grid, trying to get them through everything. How did that work for different families? What did you see?
I had some where I never saw I didn't see the student at all the entire time. So we would have Zoom meetings, and some kids I have not seen since March 12th. Other kids, they'll pop in, pop out a week or so at a time. It was a lot of chasing parents down, asking questions, emailing, calling. Do you need help? What do you need? Because, they would do the assignments and then they would disappear for a while and then they'll come back. So it was a lot of struggle with that. I had, the same thing where it was multiple children working on one computer. And after a while, participation would dwindle, and we would have to account for that. And, I just tell them to try your best and, do what you can. I didn't want it to become such a stressor, because it was a stressor for the parents as well. Even speaking for myself, my 12-year-old had her laptop or her iPad trying to do her work while I'm on my laptop trying to do mine, and help parents with technology issues. And it's really hard to help when I can't see what the problem is. It was a lot of screenshotting and emailing back and forth. Lots of communication with our tech team to try to get help. It was definitely a lot, especially in the beginning. Lots of tears on my end. I'm sure parents to just try to get a system. It was more of just trying to figure out a system, and where there was none to begin with.
Yeah, no, it was challenging. I know that for parents, and you all are parents as well. And so, when both parents are working, it is challenging, but we appreciate our teachers even more. But we're going to have to think about how we do this going forward, I think. Okay, so next up we have Amy Forehand, who is at Lilburn Elementary School. So good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Amy Forehand. This is my 10th year teaching in Georgia. I actually graduated from college, and I was not an education major, and I applied and was accepted to Teach for America, and they sent me to Atlanta. So I was like, okay, I'll go try out teaching for 2 years, and I fell in love with it. Fell in love with the kids. I absolutely fell in love with it. So all 10 years have been all over Georgia, at a charter school, in Atlanta public schools, and now in Gwinnett. I live here in Lilburn with my very active 2-year-old and husband. So before COVID-19, I mean, I can't say anything new. Brittany pretty much summed up everything I wanted to say beautifully. So thank you. But before the pandemic, class size was a huge concern for me. I also teach first grade. I've taught kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And so I'm really a K through 2, well, I don't want to use the word specialist, but that's really what I love doing, the little kids. And it's very challenging when you have 25 plus children that are 6 and need very specific instruction and tactile. They need to be touching things, and they're active, and they have these incredible imaginations, and you want to foster that. You don't want to kill it and just give them worksheets. But at the same time, when you have that many children, at one point last year, I had 29 first graders in my class.
Wow.
And one of my coworkers had 31.
Wow.
And you can imagine the type of quality teaching that's going on where, you know, by the time you get them all to the carpet, you've lost half of them because someone lost a tooth and someone found a spider. And, you know, these are the things that we love about our job, but also it makes it so difficult when you have that many children that need you. And then something else, again, Brittany already said this, the testing, especially for the younger kids. I also teach at a school, I'm lucky enough to teach at a school that has a very high ESOL population. And that's one thing that makes my school just beautiful and special and unique. But it also, you know, raises questions about why is it we're taking 6-year-olds that are learning the English language and putting them on a computer to test them in a language that they're not fluent in, and we're testing them on higher level thinking skills. We're not doing 6+4, you know, we're doing it in word problems. So even things like math, where you think, oh, you don't have to be fluent in English, you do. There are a lot of nuances with the language. And so pre-COVID, those were two of my biggest concerns with where education was going. Post-COVID, I would like to say, oh, it's a whole new ball game, but unfortunately, in our country, I don't think it's a surprise to say that there's a lot of inequity built into our society. Our society is built on very traditional power structures and very traditional power roles, and education is one of those structures. So the COVID-19 or the coronavirus has really shown light on a lot of the cracks in our foundation and those inequities, talking about, you know, the technology gap. I would like to say I'm so worried about my children falling behind in reading, but the things that are keeping me up at night are, do my children have enough to eat? If their parents are lucky enough to still have their jobs, is there someone that can stay home with them? That was already a problem that we saw childcare before the coronavirus. So I'm not necessarily worried, although I'm an educator first and foremost. So yes, I'm terrified that my children don't have books at home and they're not reading every day. But what I'm really staying up at night worrying about is, do they have food? Do they have a steady shelter? Do they have childcare? And those are so much bigger issues that are going on in our society. But as we know, education is connected to everything in our society. So that's kind of where my mind is now, especially closing out the school year and looking forward to next year. I'm worried. I'm worried about a lot of the problems that I see.
Right. And I would say, you know, both my parents were teachers, and they would talk about that a lot, that, you know, we often go to the schools and we expect the schools to solve a lot of our social problems, when in fact it's, you know, it's issues like having a living wage and not being thrown out of your house, you know, regularly. It's about, you know, having some affordable housing and all of these basic social supports are what allow our education system to be successful. And so making sure that the families are supported in that way. So thank you for sharing that. And I think we're all worried about that. And so just how did the teaching go, you know, post coronavirus in a, you know, in a school that probably has, you know, some special needs, you know, that are unique to it?
I'm so proud of my school. I'm so proud of the team I work on and my school in particular. The second this happened, we said, okay, we can either look up YouTube videos of other people teaching, or we can film ourselves. And it was a little awkward, a little uncomfortable, because I knew, oh gosh, it's not just my students that are going to be watching this. It's like their moms, their dads, their aunts, their uncles, their older brothers. But we just from the get-go decided the best thing that we can do is try to give our kids some consistency. And we divided up the subjects, and every one of us filmed ourselves doing small lessons, mini lessons. And then we tried to do Zooms as quickly as possible to try to at least touch base with our kids live. It was hard. Attendance was very spotty. I think for my last live session, I only had 6 kids log on. But you can only control things that you can control. And I knew from looking at our online platform, I knew I had kids that got on at 10 o'clock at night. So they could watch my YouTube video at 10 o'clock at night. They may not have been able to do the live Zoom at 1 o'clock. So yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of the lessons that we did put out, but so much of what we do in the younger grades is, well, just teaching in general. I'm sure upper grades is like this also. It's responding in the moment to your child's needs. And so much of that is authentic. I don't want to say on the fly, but you're seeing what the child is struggling with and meeting them where they are at that moment. So because we were giving them lessons on a computer, they were going off and doing it on their own, and I wasn't there to help support them. And that's where I feel like 80% of my teaching is the most, it's really impactful. And that unfortunately was taken away. But our mini lessons were fabulous.
Well, that is great. That's inspiring. Yeah, I was going to say there's probably an age too, right, where they're much more able to handle the online learning. They're a little more self-directed. My son's in 2nd grade, towards sort of the end of 2nd grade, you know, and it wasn't optimal, but it was okay, you know. But 1st grade, kindergarten, you know, they want to touch things and they want to, you know, move things around, and they're restless. They can't sit, you know, in the same
developmentally, that's where they should be, is touching things and being tactile. And so to then put everything on the computer, it was hard, and it was awkward. And we tried to be as intentional as possible. But we realized it is a limited platform for younger children.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. I could spend all day talking about these things. But moving on, we also have Noreen Freeman, who is an administrator in the Meadow Creek cluster, and so I think can give us some bigger insight, sort of an overview of how things were going, and then what? What were the challenges before, and then what happened?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I was really enthused about participating because I always have so much to share, because I'm not far removed from teaching. I'm a teacher first at heart, and you know, I teach college part-time as well. So I'm always, you know, listening to, I'm a teacher educator, what's coming up the pipelines, you know, how best can I support my teachers? I came to K-12 education 14 years ago. Prior to that, I worked at higher ed. I was at Rutgers in New Jersey, worked for the medical school in Newark, and I served on the dean's panel, and then I transferred down to Georgia because they were recruiting for teachers that spoke a second language, and where, you know, our students could see people that look like them and sound like them. So I made that transition, and I've been within that cluster since I've been there because that's my need. I love teaching and learning with a passion. I teach all day long, 24/7. I'm that administrator that would go into a classroom and say, oh, you need help with a reading group? What level are they? And come up with a teaching point and, you know, use strategies to help the students get to at least know their, you know, their word sounds, what is the main idea. I'm that type of teacher. I will pull a group, I will teach writing. I'm like, oh, you're not doing it right. Hold on, let me show you something. I'm that hands-on type of, and I come from it with from a perspective of love, because I love it. So when I present it, you can say, oh my God, just let her do her thing. Amy can tell you, she sees me a lot. I take my high heels off and I put on my sneakers and I'm running. And I could, you know, add to what Amy said, based on the students that we serve in our population, pre-pandemic, I echo some of what she mentioned. But one of the things I think people forget is that within our cluster, we have 8,500 second language kids. our school has the highest percentage of second language kids within that cluster. Our school is 75% second language, and also 95% free and reduced lunch. So we are looking at, like Amy said, trying to teach them the content, while we're trying to focus on that social emotional piece. Because if they're fed and they feel safe, they will learn. I think our roles within that cluster straddles the fence between an educator and a social worker at some point. With second language kids, they tell you it's about 7 years to acquire a language. That's not true. I'm a second language kid, so I can tell you, I can decode in one language and sometimes it doesn't transfer. So with the testing piece, like Amy said, and Brittany, that's a bane of one of discontent for me, but I know it's one thing that has to be done. But I think it's not what, it's how it's done. When you begin school the first day and you begin testing students the second day, there's something wrong with that. Where did we lose the part about getting to know your students before assigning an assessment to them so you can put them in a framework of you are level A, B, C, or D? That doesn't represent the whole child. I think about our second language kids. We have to teach them language acquisition skills, content, also how to assess using a device that they've never probably interacted with or never seen. One of the things I think assumptions are made is that all second language kids have a written print. They don't. We have students that come from the interior in South America, and they don't have a written language. They have an oral way of transferring what they say. So I think a lot of assumptions are made with that. Most of what we had, I want to say pre-pandemic, it kind of exacerbated in the right now because we got to see, like Amy said, the inequity in students having access to workable devices. Some of them tried to use their cell phones if that's all they had, as well as the inaccessibility of providing them with affordable internet access.
Right. And that's a question while you're on it from folks, which is what are the issues with home internet access and, access to basic technology that the students might need to have.
I can tell you within our cluster, I guess once the assumption was made that, everybody will be fine and they'll be able to respond, and they recognize that over 200 students probably did not log on. Okay, and why is that? We all know they have a cell phone, but they didn't have internet. So immediately we were, they provided opportunity for students who did not access the DLD at all, the digital learning, to provide them with a loaner device so that they could participate. And if they didn't have the access to technology, to internet, alert them to the hotspots where Xfinity had an AT&T, and then some low cost options that they could purchase. Despite all that, some parents still did not participate because I will tell you, quite a few of them are undocumented, don't have a credit card, are not able to, they're not literate so that they can navigate that way. Now, if we were at school, our parent center representative can, communicate with them and walk them through. But like you said, what we do, we need to have that touch. We need that one-to-one. So this takes away the, all the personal, and schooling for some of our parents probably had not been a favorable experience. It might have been threatening, uncomfortable. It might not have been their favorite time. So you could see where they struggled more, and they tried, but they struggled quite a bit. Poverty, like I said, our children, they need to eat. Despite having a high level of, socioeconomic students, free and reduced is how they eat. It's not how they learn.
Right.
So we ensure that we have one of the highest attendance policies as well, because they come to eat. And they come because of the culture that we've established for them, that they are emotionally safe. They're also physically safe. Our teachers, I always say it takes a special teacher to work within that cluster, because you're not just teaching, you are serving, using yourself as that instrument. The minute you walk in, the minute you get up, you start thinking about, how can I help my kids do what needs to be done? Because when they assess them, the results of the assessment represents me, the teacher. So I do take issue with that. Class sizes, yes. It agonizes me as an administrator when we just completed class sizes for next year. And I have to tell my second grade teacher that you have 29, and I'm not looking at you when I say that, and I expect you to move them from point A to point Z, right? I think some of the expectations are unrealistic. I do believe that the powers that be make a lot of assumptions, and they believe that what we do in the classroom, we could probably go into their homes and dictate how it should be done, but we can't. And I think one big misconception, or one thing they haven't even addressed or thought about, is the culture of the communities that we serve.
Okay.
Is education their number one priority? For some it is, for some it's not. We know when immigrants come to our country, and I can speak as an immigrant, that we know education is supposed to be the greatest equalizer. But here in this pandemic, you got to see that it was not equal. There was a lot of inequity in terms of how we communicate with our parents. So we know we have a predominant Hispanic, but we need more. We have Bosnian, we have Hmong, we have in our school we have 45 languages spoken.
Wow.
So how do you communicate with just like the main 7 and hope that the information is disseminated to everyone else through osmosis? I get very passionate and emotional because we tend to put, I would say the powers that be tend to put everyone in little boxes, right, and expect them to fit.
I've got a question from somebody out there who's saying, how can people help? Some folks are watching and they're like, saying I'm a retired learning specialist. Is there something we can do to help support
yes.
the parents and teachers in school?
Most Title I schools have a parent center component. We are in need of volunteers to, because often with Title I schools, you have to have additional support in terms of like EIP. So if we can get the stakeholders to come in and be consistent in volunteering to, read with kids and do it as many times as possible, the more you expose them to literacy, the more they have an adult that has a high expectation for them so that they can do something to, to please, they will learn. They don't have that at home. So that's the piece that the public can help by coming in.
Yep. So, I'm sorry. So if I were to direct this person to Meadow Creek cluster, would they just Google, is there a place they need where to volunteer?
They can, I'm making a plug. They can contact the parent center at Lilburn Elementary School or Meadow Creek School, any one of the schools in the cluster, but my school first, so that our grade levels can have some support. We will take anyone. We have a couple reverends and priests, and they come and they read, but they do it every week, and we want more of that. Our kids need help.
Okay. All right. Let me just get to a couple more questions here too. So let's see, going back, one, I want you to know, someone said, teachers are our heroes. I would strongly second that. So thank you for what you're doing. Another question is to talk a little about the general curriculum for ESL And our students who are ESL, which is English as a second language, for those who are not familiar with the education jargon about that, are they still required to take the same tests and complete the same work as other students? And I think that's something, Amy, you were talking a little bit about, and then Noreen, I have a feeling you have a lot to say about that.
Well, I am the ESOL administrator at my school.
Well, let me let Amy,
But I let her go first.
back to you, let you.
I'll speak from purely just a teacher's point of view. So first of all, I'm not ESOL endorsed.
Okay.
I'm just a gen ed teacher, and last year, 23 out of my 24 students were ESOL. And some of them were not learning English as a second language. It was a third or fourth language. And like Noreen said, our school is, I mean, it's beautiful. It's amazing. And in my classroom, I think my first year teaching, I had 8 different languages spoken. So it is truly a very unique, diverse community that we serve. And that makes it so much harder, like Noreen was saying, to make sure that we're welcoming families. This year, for example, I had one student where it was listed for languages spoken at home. It just said other Asian language. I was like, I don't even know how I would get a translator for that. I mean, I don't know. Like, so yes, to answer the question, then so right there, the logistics of trying to support 23 first graders in a classroom. I have one 45-minute segment with an ESOL teacher, and she's amazing, and she pushes in, and we are just completely in sync. We've worked together for 5 years. She knows my craziness and I know hers, and we don't miss a beat. But then for the other remainder of the day, it's just me making sure that these children are getting everything that they need. And it is overwhelming because yes, they are held to the same standards, which is interesting because they have WIDA descriptors, which they show, all right, and children have to take an assessment to show what level of English acquisition, like what stage they're at. And then these descriptors kind of tell us, okay, if they're at like a stage 2, let's say, for learning English, these are the types of things that are appropriate to ask them to do. But then yet when we're assessing them, we don't take those descriptors into account. So as the classroom teacher, one of the modifications that I might do is give heavy visuals, heavy manipulatives. These are things then that on the tests, they won't do. So I almost feel in some ways like I'm setting children up for failure when I am able to modify and meet them where their language needs are. Even something as simple as explaining vocabulary words. Children on a test will look at me and say, you know, can you tell me what this word means? I sure can. Just do the best you can. Yeah. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult when we're teaching one way and assessing another, and they're not necessarily meeting each other. And I'll let Noreen then take over.
Brittany, you wanted to add, do you have any ESOL students before I take over? No,
you're fine. No, I have plenty of ESOL. We have one ESOL teacher, yes, to cover the whole school. So she is definitely spread thin. We are pretty much for quite like our whole school is ESOL endorsed to, I think mainly just to alleviate that stress for her because she has a lot of students to see. But like Amy was saying with the testing, even for my average, you know, English speaking student, the test language is different than regular conversational speech. So even with the teaching, you're having to teach them the wording for the test to help them, you know, so they're having to do double duty of learning what it means in regular speech. And then also, well, this is what they're talking about if you see this word on the test, you know, so it's a lot for them to handle, which is very unfair, I feel.
Okay. Yeah, Noreen, if you can say a little bit about this, and I do want to circle back to like, how do we go forward with, coronavirus and what are we going to do if this situation continues? But yes, jump in on the ESL testing and
Yes. Like Brittany said, the access test, native English speakers would struggle on that test as well. We're not able to give them any prompting because you want to see where they are with language acquisition. And to add to what Amy was saying, when you think about the descriptors of where the behaviors that a child should exhibit based on where their level is, the descriptors do not align with the strategies that we have to implement to get them to master the standards or even get to proficient so that they can be successful on an assessment without having test sophistication strategies, which Brittany mentioned. I just made a whole flow chart. It's tough. We have 15 ESOL teachers in our building for 1,400 students. And like Amy said, each teacher has to have 6 segments to ensure that they satisfy their certification. So you have each teacher gets 45 minutes, and then we try to double dip them by having a CQI at the end of the day. And we also try to double dip by all our ESOL teachers.
What is it? CQI?
The continuous quality improvement, where the whole school does the same thing at the same time. And our CQI focus is reading, of course, and vocabulary. So we also have support from early intervention, like about 30 minutes where another teacher would go in and support them. So we try to double and triple dip them based on who we serve. Not every school does that, but our kids need to get it over and over again. And it's teacher effect is a big factor in student success, but it's a lot of weight for a teacher to carry to try to get them to learn the language, learn the content, take the assessment, and how to navigate the assessment portal. So I concur with everything that's said. Yes.
Okay, that is good. Something to work on and to
That's
think
next
about
step.
and pass along to the community. So circling back though to sort of where we are now and how we're going to make it forward. So one question is there a discussion that the school year will start earlier than usual and end earlier than usual before Thanksgiving? Anybody know anything about any of that?
No, at this point, we don't even know if we're going to have the summer school session to help these kids to catch up. We're waiting on the governor's decision, which will trickle down to the district. But if they do, I do think we are ready. We are fully prepared, and we could start the ball running in August, if the case may be.
Okay, yeah.
But we don't know.
I would like to know too.
Yes, we don't know.
We are rolling out our summer and there's no camps and there's no, we're trying to figure out what we do next. And I can only imagine children and families, where the parents are out working all day, what are we,
And it's hard as an administrator telling your teachers, because that's what we are there to support our administrators. I mean, that we don't know. It hurts me to tell them, I don't know.
Right.
No.
Well, I think part of it's the nature of the crisis too. I don't, that we don't know what comes next and we don't know how this is going to play out. But just one other, so another question is, and this is for everybody, what can volunteers, so assuming this goes on, right? And so there's a lot of talk that, we're going to go back in the fall and we may go right back into the digital learning type space. We'll start off with, what could volunteers do to help you all, during this time and help make that digital learning smoother? And I'll start with Brittany since since we've been on the ESL, you've not gotten as much airtime. So.
Oh no. Honestly, it's just a matter of being there to support. I mean, it's hard because we don't know with social distancing how much is actually going to be able to do. I know for me, just being able to meet each kid one-on-one was definitely a challenge. I have a 2-year-old as well, so I had 30 minutes and that was it, and she was all over the house. So just even having that support to have another person be able to read with them, even if it is through Zoom, they need to read. They need to read. They need to continue to write as much as possible. So just even having another person to support that besides the teacher would definitely help.
Yeah. So that might be something, if I don't know if you guys can go to your schools and say, we need to really, if we do that, we really need to beef up our volunteer programs,
Right.
and, have everybody in the community lean in and, volunteer to help, the kids do reading one-on-one and have some one-on-one time with someone. Any thoughts on that, Amy? And then we'll on sort of what.
I mean, I guess my thoughts are going a little bit bigger. I would really like to see people from the community get involved with their local school boards. I would really like people to show up to meetings and start asking questions and demanding the fact that we have this many students and we need more teachers in the classroom, and looking at why that is. And I don't know, I think sometimes teachers may not be able to speak our minds as freely. I mean, we're in it, we're grateful for our jobs, but I would like other people from the communities to be coming and sharing their concerns or thoughts.
Advocating, yeah. Advocating the resources you all clearly need.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just, that's a bigger thing, if we're going to continue with this kind of digital process, right? We need to make sure children have access to computers. They need to have internet. They need to have maybe a place to go and, for a couple hours. We really can have to think about it strategically. I will say one of the interesting things about the digital world, and we're kind of learning this on the campaign, is that, previously we always thought of ourselves as geographically bound. You go to an event, you drive there, you're at this place, you see people. And now we're like, wait a minute, there is no geography anymore. We can be anywhere. And so there may be opportunity in that, right? Maybe opportunity there. Anyway, Noreen, what are your thoughts about the future here, and both what volunteers can do and sort of what you need?
Now we recognize that the world is flat, right?
Yeah. I mean, could you link up with home country teachers?
There you go.
All sorts of possibilities we haven't even thought about yet.
I think, like we said, volunteering, yes, but we partner up with a lot of religious-based organizations that can come in, rally a team of, we have a lot of retirees, women's group that come in, and just like Brittany said, we need them to read with our kids. Also, the stakeholders need to echo the same concerns that we have to the higher ups. We're in the trenches, we're running and trying to help them survive every day. But if someone from the outside could come and see what we do and carry that message back, I think sometimes, you keep harping from the same, you're nagging, but when somebody else says it, they get it. Like when you tell your kid to clean the room and, your sister walks in, she says, clean your room. Oh, sure, auntie, I'm going to clean my room. What? We need that support. That's one way the stakeholders and the community can support teachers, because we're doing the best we can with what we have. But we need them to come in and partner with us in the schools. Anyone can volunteer to go through a process, and we identify which classrooms need either someone who's good in math, someone who can, good in writing, reading, readers theater. We have beautiful media centers with areas identified where they could come in. The kids need that. It's a hunger for them to have someone to read to them, and for them to read to. So we do need the community's help. We really do. They need to come into our schools.
Excellent. Okay.
public.
On that note, we need all of you watching to be engaged. So thank you guys so much for coming on and for doing this. Thanks to everybody who is watching it. We will be back next Tuesday, technology willing, at 6 o'clock to talk about another, community issue. And I just want to say again, we just so appreciate our teachers. We so appreciate all of you guys and what you're doing for the community and for your students. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
guys.
Mhm.